Good morning, Dog Nation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans presented by Kroger. Welcome to you, no matter which video platform you watch us on, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. We've been doing our first and 15 at DawgNation.com and on the DawgNation app. I want to finish one thing over there because I was literally right in the middle of a conversation before we welcomed all of y'all on today. So let me do one quick conclusion to a conversation there for all of our video audience, and then we'll begin the show here in a moment. And I'm a little fired up today for reasons we'll kind of get into here in just a bit. But we were talking to our buddy Visor on DawgNation.com about our excitement for the week zero's worth of games. We're talking about the Vanderbilt-Hawaii game, which is, I realize, not exactly the most riveting conversation necessarily. But Hawaii's actually a decent-sized favorite in this game against, Vanderbilt's a decent-sized favorite in this game against Hawaii on Saturday, but our buddy Visor got it at -1. That's actually really good value based on where it is right now. So good for you, Visor, there on that. Also, quick shout out to Scott Harris, who said he booked his Royal Caribbean cruise with Jessica this week, heading out on spring break. Scott, that's incredible to hear. Awesome for you. Thank you for supporting Jessica and our friends at Royal Caribbean. We really appreciate that. I think Jessica's the best. And I think that Royal Caribbean's obviously the best. I think you're going to have a great time. And, Scott, you'll have to tell us more of the details about what you're planning on doing and all of that. That is going to be really, really good. So great stuff there. All right. Very fun. Jeff Sintel stops by. Also, I forgot to tell you all this. We have a special guest today. Late in the show, and it's only a couple of minutes, but late in the show, had a chance to catch up with Willie McClendon. You'll know McClendon as the great former Georgia running back, also the father of Georgia's current running backs coach, Brian McClendon, the uncle of Georgia right tackle Warren McClendon, and the honorary captain for next Saturday's game against the Ducks. McClendon starred in the only previous meeting between Georgia and Oregon going back to 1977. I don't know. I like stuff like this, history and things like that. Obviously, the McClendon family is one of the sort of first families of Georgia football, certainly at the moment with his son on staff, his nephew on the offensive line. So how cool is this to catch up with Willie McClendon today before we're done on the show? We'll do that near the very end today. I think that's going to be a really good time. But for now, I'm a little fired up. Kirk Herbstreit had said something. And listen, I don't hate Herbie. I think he's one of the pillars of the college football media. The stuff that he says sort of matters because he's probably the most famous guy doing that type of thing for a living. But the thing that he said within the last couple of days, to me, perfectly crystallizes potentially how wrong I think people get it when they come to the overarching opinions about the upcoming season. So let's do that right here. Stetson Bennett's name is going to come up in that discussion. And the warning that Herbstreit sends towards Georgia, I think Kirby Smart's going to send it right back to him. So let's do that all right now here off the top. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Kroger, and it begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
There is so much going on here around DawgNation, and it's all really fun. We're happy to have you on board for all of it. How about yesterday? If you missed yesterday's show, go back and listen. We welcomed in former Georgia quarterback Jake Fromm on air with us yesterday. We proudly announced that Jake going to be a part of the big event we have next Thursday at the Marlowe's Tavern in Dunwoody. So many fun special things going down for that great event. Jake Fromm, a big part of that. So 6 p.m. next week right there in Dunwoody. Come out and meet Jake, hang out with DawgNation. That's going to be a great time. Georgia's also potentially on commitment watch later on this evening. We'll talk to Jeff Sintel about that coming up in just a couple of minutes, too. Now, we got all kinds of surprises, big announcements still in store for the next few days. But for now, that's kind of where things are. Commitment watch today, big event next week. All of this leading towards DawgNation Duck Hunt next Saturday as the Dogs, we think, beat down the Oregon Ducks because we remain big believers in UGA for the upcoming season. But apparently not everybody feels that way, and I have to admit something here for a moment. I am maybe more fired up about this than I probably should be because what I'm about to read to you is not really in any way an insult. But I just think that it's wrong. Not factually wrong necessarily because ultimately the results of this season are going to tell the tale one way or another. I think this is logically incorrect, logical fallacy or so, if you will, I think what fancy people might say about this. And it comes via Kirk Herbstreit, who's been on TV a little bit lately, kind of making some of his opinions for the upcoming season, giving out his Herbie Awards. Now, in one of those Herbie Awards, he gave a nice compliment in the direction of Brock Bowers. So Herbie Herbstreit is not a UGA hater. In fact, over the years, he's actually touted Georgia pretty heavily. So we're not anti-Kirk Herbstreit necessarily here. But I do think what Herbstreit says in the quote I'm going to read to you is wrong. This coming from ESPN television. I don't have the audio for you on this, but I will read the quote. So Herbstreit picks Alabama to come back and win the SEC this year. And this is what Herbie says. All you have to do is look at history. When Alabama comes up a little bit short of winning a national championship, the team that comes back the next year is incredibly motivated, Herbstreit says. Well, they came up a little short and did not get it done in Indianapolis against Stetson Bennett. Now, pause on this just for a moment. You kind of catch that drift there. Once again, I'm not anti-Herbstreit. I don't think that Herbstreit's anti-Georgia, but I don't like this particular quote. He's like, you lost to Stetson Bennett? I mean, you're Alabama and you lost to Stetson Bennett. Doesn't that almost sound like what he's kind of saying right there? Well, that's what he says. He says, you came up short. You didn't get it done in Indianapolis. You lost to Stetson Bennett. So now Alabama's going to be possessed. They're going to be on a mission. They're going to have to get through Georgia, and I think they will. That is Kirk Herbstreit from ESPN on ESPN. Now, first of all, like, what's up with possessed? Alabama's going to be possessed? Maybe Herbstreit knows something we don't know. Maybe for all those Georgia fans who've kind of always called him Nicky Satan, maybe he really is then. If Alabama's going to be possessed, then maybe this really is Nicky Satan, as some Georgia fans sometimes have a tendency to want to call Nick Saban there. But this whole idea of, and there's been some of this thus far this offseason. It's almost like the theme that kind of exists in the air is that Georgia should somehow have to apologize for beating Alabama. Oh, you done gone and done it. You done beat Alabama. Now you've made them really mad, as if Georgia's going to somehow regret winning that game in Indianapolis because of the fury that's unleashed in the Crimson Tide. I think that's a little bit silly. And it's not just like sort of emotionally silly. I think it's sort of factually silly because, as Herbstreit says, when Alabama comes, doesn't win the national championship, they come back the following year incredibly motivated. Well, Am I wrong about this? Actually, the last time prior to 2021 that Alabama lost in the national championship game, that was 2018. The following year, they didn't even make the college football playoff. So this notion of, if you beat Alabama for a national championship, you better look out by what comes next. Well, what came next that year was Bama was nowhere to be found when the playoff took place. So, this notion that Alabama always comes firing back, ready for more, like Michael Myers or whatever, sort of rising from the dead or seemingly rising from the dead, that's not always necessarily the way that all this kind of played out. That's kind of the story there on all of that. But are we going to be so sure here that Alabama definitely is the right mental frame of mind after having lost to Georgia for the national championship, that somehow that loss is kind of fueling exactly where Alabama needs to be from a psychological standpoint, from a mental standpoint, from a focus and intensity standpoint, and somehow Georgia's just going to regress because no longer they have that edge to them necessarily? Or is there a chance, and this is going to be something we revisit a couple times prior to next Saturday, is there a chance that maybe what occurred last year wasn't the end of history, maybe it was sort of the start of a new history? And maybe Georgia sort of found out on the very biggest stage of all that actually it can win, that it doesn't have to be a runner-up. It doesn't have to finish second, that Georgia actually found out what it feels like to kick in a door like it did last year in Indianapolis. And maybe going forward, maybe it wants to kick in a few more doors. Maybe it wants to keep on doing this, that maybe Bama doesn't have the edge because it lost. Maybe Georgia found a new edge, an extra level of sort of gear to go to because it finally learned how to win. I mean, a different quarterback here, different ESPN analyst here, Greg McElroy was kind of talking about this a little bit, and it kind of gets me kind of thinking along those same lines. And I'll give you the context for this and how it fits in this conversation right now. So they're doing this thing on the SEC Network the other day of, hey, best quarterback, throwing arm, best quarterback, whatever else, all these like sort of quarterback superlatives. And I guess I didn't see the segment, but I guess Stetson Bennett wasn't ranking very high on any of these particular, superlatives. And so Greg McElroy, the former Bama quarterback, the ESPN analyst who was doing the rankings, was sort of asked about, well, why are you leaving Stetson Bennett off of all of this? And at the very end of this, McElroy actually gives Bennett maybe the greatest compliment of all. And it fits in very well with what we're talking about here at the moment. Let me let you hear McElroy, and I'll explain why it fits. This from the other day on the SEC Network.
He was on the radar for every category except for strongest arm. And the thing is, he's never going to be the guy that wins a beauty contest. He's never going to be a guy that's listed with a ton of superlatives. But the actual productivity is always going to be better than how it might look on paper. So that's what I love about Stetson Bennett. The guy is the consummate overachiever and is continuing to get better, continuing to hone his craft. Now, he's never going to win a 100-yard dash. He's never going to be able to go to the combine and post the highest velocity on some of his throws or throw the ball further than any other quarterback. But I can tell you this much. If I got to win a game in the fourth quarter, and if you would have made that one of your superlatives, he would have without question made the list.
So put aside everything else that Greg McElroy just said except for the very last thing. Hey, Stetson Bennett may not win a 100-yard dash, and he may not thrill folks in the NFL Combine, but in the fourth quarter, he's a winner. What if that's just his identity as a player? And what if Bennett represents the identity of Georgia as a program? What if that's what Georgia became on the way to knocking off Alabama in Indianapolis a year ago? What if Georgia became winners? You know, what if that's what the story of what this is? And conversely, Alabama, who Kirk Herbstreit says, they're going to be motivated. They're going to have the right edge. They're going to come back more fired up than ever. Well, let me ask you this, and try to put your Georgia fan hat off on this for a moment. I'll try to do the same thing. Based on the chatter that's existed around Alabama over the course of these last few months, as objective as any of us know how to be, does it sound like winner talk coming out of Alabama? Doesn't to me. Sort of sounds like whiner talk. Right now, the look between Georgia and Alabama, the comparison between the two programs, one program sort of looks like winners, and one program sort of looks like whiners. And for Georgia, it's championship ring, it's parade, it's national championship gear that we all love wearing. And for Alabama, it's injured cornerbacks and injured wide receivers and woulda, coulda, shoulda, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, the comparison between Georgia and Alabama right now looks like winners versus whiners. And somehow Kirby Smart thinks that's going to magically change once the 2022 season begins, and somehow Alabama's going to have this extra edge, some extra gear that it goes and finds, and Georgia's just going to sort of fall apart and kind of become complacent and get fat and happy because of the championship they won a year ago. But my simple question is, what if that's not true? Because I think when it comes to Georgia coach Kirby Smart, he is certainly not conceding that it will be true. For everything that Kirk Herbstreit says about watch out for Alabama, watch out for their extra edge, watch out for their motivation, watch out for their demon possession or whatever it was he was talking about a moment ago, watch out for all of that. Kirby Smart back at SEC Media Days in July would say to Kirk Herbstreit and anybody else who's kind of following the same line of thought, while you're watching out for Alabama, don't forget to watch out for us. This is Kirby back in July.
I've done the rounds this morning. I'll bet you at least 50 people have asked me the question, so feel free when we open up for questions to ask me the concern there is for complacency. That does not concern me in the least, because to be complacent, you have to have done something and achieved something. The men on this team for this season have not done that. They have not. We have 15 players that are now gone to NFL camps or draft picks. They're gone. And we have some returning players, but they're hungry as ever. People have asked the question, how does it feel to be hunted? We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction. It's not something we're going to sit back and be passive about.
The bottom line here is we've called next Saturday our DawgNation Duck Hunt. But Georgia, as you know, is not on a hunt to beat Oregon. That's just step one in a much longer journey than that. You listen to Kirby Smart, he says the hunt Georgia's on is to go back and win another championship. And don't discount the possibility that Georgia's more motivated to win its second than Alabama is to get the revenge for having lost a year ago. This notion that Alabama obviously has some sort of emotional edge, some sort of competitive edge because it's angry because it got beat. The fact of the matter is, I think Georgia's actually enjoyed the last few months of what it feels like to be on top of the college football world, and I don't think they plan on relinquishing that spot without a fight. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Kroger, and we are happy to have you with us. No matter how you get to us today, live on video, 10 a.m. on all cross video platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. I'm laughing at myself because I guess I've never really quite realized this. Trying to say Kirby and Kirk in the same segment over and over again got to be a little tricky for me there. I got a little tongue-tied on the Herbstreit and the Kirby there on that. Herbie and Kirby and Kirk and all that. Anyway, fun stuff nonetheless. And a big thanks to all of you who tune in on video, even though every now and then we kind of get tripped up and stumble over a word or two. We just enjoy talking Georgia football with you, and we're happy to have you with us on board as we do all of that. Big thanks to our friends at Kroger who make it all possible for you there too. How about Kroger Chef Junior being back? This is fun stuff. You got kids that like making food, or maybe kids that you want to teach how to make food? Well, Kroger Chef Junior can do that with you a couple of times this upcoming month at select Kroger locations. You can make a delicious thing and have a really cool, healthy snack, and really fun experience as your kids learn a lot more about what food preparation is all about. How about making lettuce wraps this month? You can do it on September 10th. You can do it on September 24th. Select Kroger locations. The lettuce wraps are going to taste great. It's going to be healthy for your kids, and it's going to be really fun to make there too. The Kroger Chef Junior experience is just $7 per child, and it comes with the experience of making the item, but also some really cool stuff there as well. You get an apron and patch, a chef's hat, a recipe card and box, and a whisk for only $7 per child. So make sure you check that out. The website to do so is KrogerChefJunior.com. That's the word junior spelled out, Junor. KrogerChefJunior.com for a lot more on that. Georgia might be on commit watch here today, so we will talk to Jeff Sintel about that coming up in a couple of moments' time. And we also have a very special guest on today's program. Now, we had a cool special guest yesterday. It was really fun to make the announcement of Jake Fromm being with us for our Marlowe's Tavern event next Thursday at Marlowe's in Dunwoody. Today's special guest is a little bit different. You may have seen the news on this, that the great former Georgia running back Willie McClendon was named as an honorary captain for the Georgia-Oregon game next Saturday, which I think is great. McClendon was actually one of the stars in the only previous meeting between the Dogs and the Ducks, and so we're going to talk to him about that a little bit, but also we're going to talk to him about the pride that he has about his son Brian being back at Georgia's wide receivers coach, his nephew Warren McClendon being the terrific right tackle for these Dogs there as well. The McClendon family really well represented around the UGA program, Willie obviously being a big part of that. So before we're done today, late in today's program, we'll catch up with the great former Georgia running back Willie McClendon. That's going to be a really fun thing to be able to do. For now, though, let's go around the doghouse, and it's presented by Berkshire Hathaway Home Services here today, and we're so happy to have them, and we love what they can do for you. We'll tell you more about that here in a moment. First, though, let me talk about what Jalen Carter can do for you. And by now you know this. We talked yesterday here on the show about Carter being kind of one of the known knowns for Georgia, that this is one of your sure things, that when you start a season, you better have some things you know for sure. Otherwise, you're probably not very good as a football team. Well, one of Georgia's biggest knowns is the fact that Carter is a dominant player, and Carter may be, we believe, the best player in the country this year. Will Anderson Jr., I believe, rightly is considered that right now, but let's see how the next 15 games play out between these two players, and we'll decide who ends up being actually the very best in the country before the upcoming season is done. And the one thing we kind of pointed out a year ago, or I should say about a year ago, was that there were people last year saying, of all these talented Georgia defensive linemen, actually Carter's the very best one. And that's not meant to disrespect Jordan Davis. It's not meant to disrespect Devontae Wyatt, guys who were number one picks, first-round picks, or a guy like Trayvon Walker, who was the number one overall pick. Not meant to disrespect them, but that's the kind of praise that Carter was getting a year ago. Whether it's true or not, that's the chatter that was taking place. So all of a sudden now, Jalen's still here. This is his third year. This is his time to be the anchor of that Georgia defensive line, in a lot of ways the anchor of the defense overall. And you better believe that he is being noticed, and he is getting the praise that he deserves. I saw where Jordan Reed, this is one of those analysts that covers the draft for ESPN, he was also on the SEC network this week and on television this week, kind of went into why he believes that not only will Jalen Carter be a first-round pick, Reed's actually got him being selected inside the top 5. That's the level of player that he is, potentially maybe even a back-to-back number 1 overall pick for these Dogs. This is Jordan Reed from the SEC network on Jalen Carter.
He's one of those players that you only have to watch 5 plays, and you say, yep, he's a good player. All you have to do is just watch the Kentucky game. And he was on a defensive line with 3 first-round picks last year, Trayvon Walker, and then some other players that went in the first round, Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis. I think he was the best of the bunch. Yes. And that says a lot about him being the best player over number 1 overall pick, Trayvon Walker. So, like I said, just look at the Kentucky game. He takes it over. Vanderbilt, obviously, as you saw on the screen right there, he dominated, and I expect him to dominate this year as well.
So there you go. That's Jordan Reed talking about the dominance that he expects to see Jalen Carter bring to the field here for this upcoming season. Now, let me tell you something I think is cool. Like, that is a level of praise that is pretty rare. That kind of effusive, hey, you watch him for 4 plays, you know how great he is. That's a level of praise that's pretty rare. And you might be concerned with the old phrase that we've tried to put to bed, but it kind of still exists in kind of the college ball lexicon, the idea of rat poison, the idea of, hey, you can't pat somebody on the back too much. They might slow them down. That might get them reading their press clippings. They may be less than they could be if they're getting that level of praise. We kind of know that conversation exists a lot. And what I think is kind of cool here, sort of as a partner to the fact that Georgia has a player that's getting that level of praise prior to the start of the season, is the idea for someone like Jalen Carter, almost none of this seems to be going to his head at all, because for Carter, he's been hearing this kind of stuff for quite some time. He's a former elite recruit. He's, now earning that same sort of paying off on those predictions with how he's playing here right now. And if anything, the idea that he could be the next Trayvon Walker or the next Jordan Davis or the next Devontae Wyatt, instead of thinking he's arrived, actually, based on what Carter himself said earlier this spring, it's only motivating him to be an even better player this fall, because he knows the prize in terms of riches and all of that could be on his way if he does what needs to be done. This isn't great audio quality, but this is Carter in his own words, and I wanted you to be able to hear it.
I work different ways. I started running more after practice and all that, because them guys motivated me to do more, because they told me I could be top 10 pick and all that. So I've done a lot that I usually didn't do my freshman year, and I've just been working harder.
Yeah, you came in as a 5-star prospect. You've had expectations your entire time here. How have you, do you think you've gone about living up to those now, entering your junior year? What are your own sort of expectations entering this season?
I don't really know. The 5 stars is all cool and all, but I came here with a new start and new mindset, saying I got to earn everything I do. And just playing with them guys, I feel like I have done what was needed.
So I think it's incredibly valuable that Carter got to spend the entire year last season around guys who traveled a path that now he himself wants to travel. And as Jordan Reed brought up a moment ago, in a lot of games, Carter was actually the player that maybe stood out more so than anybody else. He physically was probably maybe the most talented player on the Georgia roster, even on a national championship team last season, with 15 guys that got drafted and 5 guys off the defense taken in the first round. That's how rare the physical abilities that Jalen Carter has might actually be. But actually putting all that together, that potential together, and turning that into true performance, that takes a little something extra, and that's the job that Carter has here this season. And maybe he does that, maybe he doesn't. We certainly think he has a great chance to. But the one thing that seems obvious from listening to him in his own words, he's a soft-spoken guy. He does not seek out microphones necessarily, but all of this praise, all this attention doesn't seem to be going to his head. If anything, it becomes a source of motivation, a thing that he's actually chasing after to be even better this year than he was last season. And that is a fun thing for Georgia fans to consider. And that is Around the Doghouse, presented today by Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. We love having Berkshire Hathaway here with us on Around the Doghouse here each week, because we love the resources they provide you for your home buying, your selling needs, your commercial needs, your investment needs, if you want to get involved in an investment property, because they've got 29 offices and more than 1,500 associates all across the state of Georgia. And when you do business with a great full-service brokerage service like our friends at Berkshire Hathaway, you're going to get the great service, the great care, the great attention to detail, the integrity that each and every one of their agents brings to the table into the transaction. You're going to get all of that. So I want you to use Berkshire Hathaway Home Services as kind of your one-stop shop for everything you might need from a real estate situation. As I said before, you're buying a property, you're selling a property, you're getting involved in an investment property, you're looking to get involved in a commercial venture, you need a new building for your business, something along those lines. Or I'm talking about financing or title insurance or relocation, new homes, the entire gamut of all the real estate needs. Berkshire Hathaway Home Services got you covered on all of that. They believe the best time for new beginnings is right now. So make sure you check them out. Berkshire Hathaway Home Services online at bhhsgeorgia.com. That's BHHSGeorgia.com. Make sure you check them out today. And it is great to have Berkshire Hathaway Home Services here, part of Around the Doghouse on DawgNation Daily. All right, let's remind you, before we are done today, it is Willie McClendon, the great former Georgia running back. We'll talk to him about being an honorary captain for the big game next Saturday against the Oregon Ducks, and also his thoughts on his son Brian being back at UGA as wide receivers coach and the outlook for them this upcoming season. His nephew Warren McClendon there as right tackle there for that. Just kind of a big family affair there for the McClendons there when it comes to the University of Georgia. So we'll talk to Willie McClendon about all of that. Also, we'll kind of get into a little bit of the slate for college football action here this weekend. I was talking to somebody today, and he was like, I didn't even know there were games this weekend. So let's make sure that you are aware of that. There are some games here this weekend. There's one SEC team in action. And actually, we're also less than a week away now from next Thursday when you got a couple of SEC teams in action. And then, obviously, everything that goes on there that Saturday. So football season is here. We're rocking and rolling. We are ready to go. And we are happy to have you with us here today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. All right, so we don't have Jeff Sentell. Somehow, some way, that's not going down here right now. So we'll see if we can catch up with Jeff. Not quite sure what that's all about, but there you go. So we'll, I guess, wait on Jeff, try to figure that out. No. We'll get him coming up here in a little bit. Let me take a few of your comments there before we get ready to do that. And so we'll see if we can catch up with Jeff here coming up in a little bit. So on YouTube here for a moment. Foster Moss says, I'm dressed like I'm trying to sell you insurance. So I told our video audience before that we started the show that on Fridays, I do high school football, and I'll look forward to seeing you tonight on Peachtree TV for North Atlanta and Drew. We have a really fun game coming up tonight. Game 1 of the 4 games worth of the Great Atlanta Bash. Matt Stewart's got you for 3 tomorrow on Peachtree TV and streaming at CBS46.com. I've got you tonight. And so I kind of come dressed for high school football here on Fridays because it's just sort of one more thing for me to forget if I try to drag all my dress clothes with me into the office each and every day into our studio. But there you go. G. Grace Bama Boy checks in to say, Tennille and I should call Oregon and tell them to put a Bama A on their uniform. Georgia players will immediately start to shake. Actually, Georgia's only favored by 18 against Oregon. They beat Bama by 13. Honestly, would Georgia fans, take what they got against Oregon? Would they take that against Oregon, what they got against Bama? They might. I don't know. They actually beat Alabama pretty handily the last time they played. Zebulon Owen said I read the wrong comment. Average at best says, what kind of vacuum does BA sell? So there you go on that. Let's see what else. What's our producer, Michael Carvel, sending me something here. Let's see. All right, so there you go. So Jeff's running a little late. He said he'd join us here in a few minutes. So there you go. Jerry McIntosh says, let the dogs unpossess them on the field. Yeah, it's the whole idea of Alabama's going to be possessed. We talking about the exorcism here? Their head going to start spinning around? What's going on there with that? I don't know. Frank Patterson says, Kirk Herbstreit says Bama's mad when half the Shriners started the season. That's a good point. It's actually a really good point. And Frankie's always had kind of his finger on the pulse of this. How are the Alabama players motivated when half of them were spread out all across the country last year? You got a receiver who was at Louisville, running back who was at Tech. They got beat by Georgia 100-0. I don't quite know what they got going on when it comes to all that. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Jonathan Aaron says, imagine being excited for football season and remembering you're a Gator fan. That's such a gut punch. Yeah, it is. I think it is. I think you're exactly right about that. I really do. Over on DawgNation.com for a minute. Randy Hall says, does Nick Saban turn into Linda Blair? That's a great old movie reference. That's pretty good stuff. So, we'll get more of your comments. We do have Jeff Sentell ready to go here. Keith Finney says, I look like a Bible salesman. Listen, I'll take that. I don't mind. Every now and then you have to sort of dress professionally. You got to put on a little bit of button up, whatever else. So I don't mind that. If I look as trustworthy as a Bible salesman does, then I'll absolutely take that to the bank and run with it. So, all right, we are now incredibly late. So let's see if we can get the show back on the road here. Willie McClendon later on. Thoughts on Week 0 coming up there too. But for now, the state of Georgia recruiting and the idea that Georgia may be on commit watch later on today. Let's talk to Jeff Sentell right now. We call it On the Road with Jeff Sentell, assisted by AAA.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
All right, on the road, assisted by AAA with Jeff Sintel. Converse, Texas is the, epicenter for UGA recruiting talk today. As later on this evening, wide receiver Anthony Evans gets ready to make his commitment decision. Seems like maybe a little bit of a Georgia-Oklahoma battle here on this. Jeff, you certainly had a good piece on Evans the other day at DawgNation.com. How do you handicap this race as you kind of finish up with the Evans decision later on today?
Yeah, good morning. Happy Friday to everybody, especially all those honest faces of those Bible salesmen out there. I would say it's really, Brandon, it's like every recruitment we're going to cover and talk about from now on. There's what we think we know, there's what could happen, and then there's the threat of NIL down the road as well. Texas A&M is involved here. He made it very clear to me that he said that James Coley and Texas A&M was still a contender. School he hasn't visited, Penn State. That's what he still believes he might take an official visit to Penn State even after his commitment. But, by and large, a lot of people, you kind of have it right there. A lot of people think it's Oklahoma. A lot of people think it's Georgia. I think the door for Georgia has been open at times, and then it has been stunted at times. But I think the national headlines from Cole Gundy, was it Oklahoma for like 23 years, rewrote their passing record book as a quarterback in the early 90s. Lifelong Oklahoma, the unfortunate story there where he resigned because of, at least surface level, there were some things that he read off an iPad that he shouldn't have with Brent Venables and his Oklahoma staff. And that was his main recruiter. It was like Georgia losing Dell McGee in a key 5-star recruitment of a running back. I think it really hurt Oklahoma's chances. The thing that's different, Brandon, and I think this is a larger picture, the way I want folks to understand how Georgia recruits these days, and it's an example of, basically you don't have to de-recruit a lot of these young men once they come to Georgia. My friend, Georgia has reached a point where if it's not the program, if it's not the pipeline, if it's not the championship, if it's not the development that's been shown and winning at the highest of levels, and we want you, we think we thrive here in our offense, if that's not going to be enough with recruiting with a Kirby Smart, a Todd Monken, a head coach, the coordinator, and then the position coach and Willie McClendon, if that's not enough, well, then they're not going to go above and beyond and have the entire staff recruit you, which is what Oklahoma has done, trying to build their program, trying to get to where Georgia is right now, where they've had up to 20 people on the staff talk to him all the time. And that's why Oklahoma is still in it, because he knows the entire coaching network, the entire, the coach's photo from Florida. He knows all those guys, all those assistants, all those GAs, all those analysts in the team photo right there. And that's what keeps Oklahoma in it with some really good, the mother, Anthony Evans' mother, is a huge dog fan. A lot of his family's from Savannah. So Georgia certainly has, I would say, more than a puncher's chance in this contest tonight.
I'm going to ask you a blunt question. Is Anthony Evans a good player? I know he's fast, but do you think he's good?
I think he's really good, Brendan. I think the one thing that folks will see about Anthony Evans when they dive into his film, and man, I did this probably back in February when those track times were coming out, maybe in March April when he was taking his visits to Georgia around the scrimmage time for the first time, and I started looking at stuff, Brandon. And what do the cool kids say now? They call the routes crispy when you can really run really tight, really technically sound Terrence Edwards level routes. And really, he doesn't get enough credit, I think, for the way that he can get a guy and turn a guy around and really get up on a DB and cause a serious threat level about whether he's going to stop, break the route off, or come back for a comeback, or just house it at the same time. I think one of the most underrated things about Anthony Evans III, because everybody's going to talk about speed, is the way he runs his routes. I think they are very technically good for somebody on their way into college out of high school.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Arian Smith thing where, and listen, Smith's a little bit different kind of prospect. He was a top 10 receiver rated nationally, but when you saw Arian, you got this sense that, hey, he's actually more than just a track guy, because we've seen track guys in the SEC try to transition to receiver, and sometimes it doesn't really work. I don't think that Auburn ever got much out of Anthony Schwartz as a for instance here on this. But in Smith's case, he can catch the football. Like when he actually plays, when he's been healthy enough to play, he looks like a wide receiver. And so what you're saying there about Evans, I think, makes me intrigued here from the standpoint of this isn't just a guy that can run. They're trying to teach the position that if he's got this sort of, ability to kind of understand routes and run the precise routes, then maybe it's more than just a speedy guy you're trying to make a project out of, but it's actually someone who has some precision to his game already.
And Brandon, what they're doing, and this is a parallel that you like to dwell in a lot. It's that risk management principle. First of all, Georgia's going to have C.J. Smith on the roster running at 10-3. It's going to have Arian Smith running at 10-2. The more guys, and if you can add Anthony Evans to this, who's been clocked at 10-2-7, when he really doesn't even train for the 100, he trains for the 200. Sooner or later, one of those guys are going to have 2 healthy legs, 2 healthy arms, 2 healthy feet, 2 healthy knees. Goodness, knowing a lot of the unfortunate situations that have befallen Arian Smith so far during his time at Georgia. But you're going to eventually have that take the top off the defense guy that's going to give you 12, 13, 14 games worth of production out wide. And that's when I think Georgia's offense can get really scary. I mean, there's like a difference between his speed and Brandon, I want to make sure all the good folks out there know this about the potential of Anthony Evans, the third here. It's not just that he's fast. It's that he is, nuclear explosive. When you think about it, in 1 week of high school, Brandon, he clocked a 10-2-7 in the 100. That is elite world-class speed for a high school kid. And then he also long jumped 24 feet. I'm just going to say the name. It's not comparing football. Brandon, that's the type of athleticism that Champ Bailey had when he was at Georgia. A 24-foot long jump, that's better than what Malachi Starks did. Everybody's raving about Malachi Starks right now from fall camp with very good reason. But Malachi's probably a 10-6 guy in the 100, and he's probably a 23 and change type long jump guy. So when you bring Anthony Evans and everything he brings to the table, that's an incredible athletic package. Long jump, speed, routes. It's really not just being a burner.
So I want to transition to something a little bit, and I want to kind of go back to a topic that you and I were talking about last week, because I had you on the show earlier last week. We did a longer interview than normal, and my reason for doing that is I wanted to give voice to a concern that seems to exist with some Georgia fans about the current state of the 2023 class. And as we said last week, and I've said kind of multiple times, this is something in between that sort of like popular online meme of what's wrong with Georgia recruiting when laugh, laugh, laugh. There's really nothing wrong with Georgia recruiting. And on the other side of that, there's sort of patting people on the head and saying, don't you worry your pretty little face over this. Georgia recruiting is going to be just fine. Like the more you kind of dive into this, and this is kind of on my mind a little bit because I wrote our Gimme 5 piece this week at DawgNation.com. And as you know, Jeff, you get a lot of recruiting questions when you do a piece like that no matter how I slice it up, this 2023 class, Jeff, is going to be different for UGA. And I mean different from the standpoint that it's almost certainly going to be inferior, at least in one category, unless you can tell me a reason why I'm wrong here. Last year, Georgia signs 5, composite 5-stars. Year before that, it was 4. Year before that, it was 4. Year before that, it was 5. You want to go back to 2018, they signed 7, which is obviously kind of a ludicrous number, but still, it's Georgia's track record in all this. Georgia's got one commit right now who counts as a 5-star. That's A.J. Harris. Even if you say that Janelle Aguero, because I think he's, rated 39th or something like that in the composite, he's basically a 5-star. Even if you count him as a 5-star, which is not currently rated as one, and you look ahead to like the Hakeem Williamses and the James Smith, Quay Rusas, Samuel Mpemba's a part of this obviously too, but certainly Georgia seems to me, Jeff, on pace to sign fewer 5-stars than it has signed in previous years. That's at least one small kind of thin slice of how this recruiting cycle is playing out a little bit different for Georgia than previous cycles have played out. Isn't that just obviously measurably true that the Georgia profile for this 2023 class is just different than we've experienced in the recent past?
Yeah, you're right about Aguero, though. He's been bouncing back and forth between a 4-star and a 5-star. I think the recent re-rankings and re-evaluations just cost him his 5th star. I believe he's still a top 25, 28 prospect on the 24/7 isolated rating. I just keep coming back to this, Brennan. If they would have had all the success in the world, the 3-star number right now would be, with the 5-star number now, that would be 3. That would be Archibald and Caleb Downs. That would be the ones, if they could get everybody they wanted, they would currently have 3. I think the number, my friend, still gets to 4 this year with what they're going to do in the rest of the cycle. I think, and I keep coming back to it, and you just got to take this look, Brandon. This is the one I do from doing this a lot of years, a lot of time. You just can't. Well, first of all, the national championship boost is what everybody's expecting, and normally that doesn't happen the year directly after the championship. It happens the following year if you have continuity. And I think because a lot of by the time a team wins a championship in January, before all these kids' senior years, by and large, they know who the teams are. They know where they want to play. I think this year, we got to say this again, Brandon. I think NIL plays a factor in a lot of these recruitments now more than ever before, especially a guy like Hakeem Williams. For the longest time, you've gotten the sense that Georgia was really in good shape with Hakeem Williams, but the more visits he takes, the more schools he entertains, the more complicated that stuff gets. And I just come down to this one thing, Brandon. You can't expect this last year and the pipeline and everything that happened for Georgia. You can't expect that to automatically crystallize the 5-star quarterbacks and the 5-star receivers in the same class, because that's the way this class would have become special. And everybody talks about is this the best period of Georgia football? Is this the golden era of Georgia football? Probably is, Brandon. But they want to see golden area type things on the recruiting trail as well. And I'm going to tell you, though, if they end up with any of these names out there, Brandon, it's still going to be a defensive-heavy class, a tremendously defensive-heavy class. But what could happen is the 5-star count might get up to 4, and then you're going to sit there and hope, Brandon, for the next month. This is a big storyline right now in Georgia recruiting. You have Anthony Evans today, probably around 4:30 Eastern time is when he's supposed to make that announcement. And then you have Hakeem Williams on September the 23rd, and then you have Tyler Williams on September the 27th. Brendan, what you want and what this class has to have, by and large, you're going to find out a lot more about it over the next 30 days.
Looking forward to following that with you there at DawgNation.com. Of course, we're on the road, assisted by AAA with Jeff Sintel here today, and we certainly appreciate our friends at AAA for being a big part of that. We love them for legendary roadside assistance. I was actually thankful this week we didn't have to use AAA for roadside assistance. I feel like I've been doing that a lot here as of late, and I'm sure AAA was probably glad not to have me call and have some car towed here this week. But nonetheless, we're all taken care of when it comes to that. But we don't just think about AAA when it comes to roadside assistance. We think about them for great insurance products too, including home insurance. That when you switch to your home insurance through AAA, you can qualify for what they call claim forgiveness, which is awesome, which means your first claim is totally forgiven when you're insured and claim-free with insurance through AAA for 5 years. So a great incentive for you to maintain that relationship with AAA. How about a claim forgiveness opportunity there from our friends at AAA? So you can find out more about this by checking out AAA.com/home insurance. That's AAA.com/home insurance. Or give them a call, 833-718-2075. That's 833-718-2075. Jeff, I had a great time with you last Saturday. We saw a thrilling football game between Brookwood and Norcross. And we also saw a great story playing out in front of our eyes. It's a story I know you know well. You wrote about this week at DawgNation.com. And there was already a lot to like about Lawson Lucky, the UGA tight end commit, had a great touchdown to kick off that game last Saturday against Brookwood, but also a very inspiring story too. And one of the things I think a lot of Georgia fans like is the idea of family connections for Georgia players. This is, folks who have, fully formed lives away from the football field and have intense motivations. And for Lawson here, part of that is about a sibling and an incredibly inspiring story of, hey, maybe the toughest Lucky of them all after triplets that have been through UGA, Lawson that's on his way. Maybe the toughest one of them all is Cannon, who I know you've written about at DawgNation.com. Very inspiring story for what kind of drives Lawson as a football player.
Yeah, Brandon, let me see. I'm going to show my skis a little bit here in my age. I've been a full-fledged reporter probably since 1998 or so, out in the world as a functioning reporter. I don't know if I've had 4 or 5 stories in my career, and I really try to seek a lot of these out about the Lucky story. I'll be very frank. When I came home to my house from visiting with the Lucky family, I sat down with my children and started talking to them about it, probably for about an hour. And the thing that goes through my head is how could I be like that, as strong as these people are, these incredible people are? Like, would my kids be as strong? Could we find the joy in the simplest moments of life, just like sitting around a table and everybody eating dinner, or going to a ball game together, I do think as people, Brandon, we all take that so very much for granted. And I know that story has changed me. I will not be the same person after having reported on that story and covered that story. And I'm in my 40s. I don't expect these revelatory moments in my life. And all I tried to put on the page, folks, is what I saw and what I felt and what you guys, everybody out there, needed to know about the Lunkies. You will never hear me say, please go read this story. You will never hear me say 19 times on Twitter, this is great, this is whatever, everybody else, you'll never hear me say that. I just think folks out there need to get to this story because it will touch you. It will make you want to be a better husband, a better father, a better mom, a better dad, a better parent, a better person. And I think that's what sports really should do. It should be a prism for our daily lives. It should show us character revelation through sport, through games. And, I mean, these Luckies, man, are made of some incredibly stern stuff. I can't imagine what that family has endured. The story of how he went to Georgia, that's what I'm paid to do. I got to write stories about how guys go to Georgia. I cannot fathom a more original, a more heartfelt story of why Lawson Lucky finally knew he had to be a dog. Even with the tight end offense, even as great as Todd Hartley is, even with the legacy and the ties to Georgia and the home state and the national championship, all the many myriad of reasons why I would choose Georgia. The moment when Lawson Lucky knew he had to go to Georgia is such about family, such about sacrifice, and it's such about taking care of his mother, Hillary Lucky, and a lady that runs half marathons, pushing a 70-pound, 9-year-old son, young man in a roller, in a stroller. She runs half marathons, pushing her son along, and she's doing it about 9 minutes every mile. It's just amazing, Brandon. And I'm not going to gush any more about this because I could do an episode, a Ken Burns documentary about how awesome I think the Luckies are. But I'll just leave it at that. That is a very special family, a very special story, and I hope you guys got a chance to read it.
And I certainly appreciated the folks, Score Atlanta, Peachtree TV, allowing so much of that story to be a part of the TV broadcast last Saturday for the Norcross Brookwood game, including the opening coin toss with the Lucky family out there and being a part of that. That was a nice thing to be able to see. And it was a great story to read there at DawgNation.com. Jeff, we'll look forward to reading more of those stories from you here in the future. And obviously follow your coverage today of Anthony Evans as he makes his decision and everything else that takes place for the 2023 recruiting class. Thank you so much for being with us here today on the road, assisted by AAA, and we will look forward to talking to you soon.
Hey, Brandon, take it easy, man. Have a great weekend, sir.
You too.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
Yeah, really good stuff from Jeff Sintel, the Lucky family. Lawson's a very good player, and he is sort of that next in line in terms of very dynamic tight ends on his way to UGA, but also a very touching backstory, too. And just kind of listen, this is one of the things that Kirby's talked about. I'm going to be very quick with this, and then we're going to move on. You know, Kirby and other players themselves have sort of talked a lot about what he calls their why. You know, a lot of people kind of believe this. You have to have like a sort of a big why to kind of power you in life. And for football, they've kind of, why do you play? What is your reason for playing? That's what the players themselves have kind of called their why. And they have these like meetings, and they call them skull sessions, skull obviously being your brain, connecting with each other, learning about that is really what the story of football is about. That this is not fantasy football. And for much as we love like sort of gambling and point spreads or, things like that, these football teams are not just a series of numbers and stats and lines and projections. There are human beings like flesh and blood who are out there playing, and they have hopes and dreams. They've had good days and bad days, and some of them have kind of overcome harrowing circumstances, or they've seen others around them who are doing the same thing. And so kind of being, I guess, more fully aware of that is a pretty important thing. So good story from Jeff at DawgNation.com on Lawson Lucky about specifically what his family, including his own sibling, has kind of overcome there. So you can read more about that at DawgNation.com. For now, though, let's get ready to go cruise around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And, man, I am so excited. We've got Royal Caribbean cruise vacations coming up. I've got one in December. That's a shorter one. Longer one, though, coming up in February. That's always my big one right there. You kind of get post-signing day, get the season behind you, and you can really get into vacation mode. That's when BA's breaking out like the tropical shirts, and that's when BA's kind of working on his winter tan. My goal to be, of course, tan 12 months out of the year. You can't do that if you don't have a nice, big February-style cruise to be able to do that. A lot of you feel the same way. In fact, I just heard from Scott Harris, one of our great viewers, who checked in with me at DawgNation.com a few minutes ago to say that he's actually reached out to our friend Jessica Slater, and he's got a spring break cruise already in the books for 2023. That, folks, is the way that it's done. And you can follow Scott's path and reach out to Jessica. DreamVacations.com/JSlater, DreamVacations.com/JSlater, or give her a call, 770-718-9147, 770-718-9147. This is what I love about Royal Caribbean. They understand that the great vacation experience comes by using a great travel agent. That when you think about all the different ships you can sail on, the ports you can sail out of, the places you can visit on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship, that's a lot of variables. That's a lot of options. So walk through all of this with someone who kind of understands all those different choices, and that's what Jessica's all about. So you can check her out for more on that. Now, for you, before we get ready to welcome in here in just a couple of minutes, Willie McClendon, the former Georgia running back, let us go cruise around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. A little bit of a cheat on this. We're talking about one SEC team among others who are playing this weekend. Do we have some of those games we can kind of throw up? Okay, so here are the games to watch here for the upcoming Week 0. You got Austin Peay in Western Kentucky. That's noon or 11 a.m. on the CBS Sports Network. Nebraska Northwestern on Fox. That takes place in Ireland. That's fun. By the way, great job by our producer, Michael Carvell, giving you all this. How about this game? This is not on your radar, but it maybe should be. 2:30 p.m., you got Jacksonville State and Stephen F. Austin. The Jacksonville State coach has accused the Stephen F. Austin coaching staff of spying on their practice, like actually coming to, and you should know this, Jacksonville State's in Alabama, it's not in Florida, coming to Alabama and spying on their practices. He said he had to send like this big, gruff assistant coach to kind of throw him out of the building there at the spring game. And so apparently the Lumberjacks of Stephen F. Austin have been doing some Bill Belichick-style espionage on Jacksonville State here. So a little extra juice for that one out of the Week 0 slate. Idaho State's UNLV. Wyoming's at Illinois. One of the few games I do like. I like Illinois a lot on Saturday. They're a pretty big favorite, but this is also Brett Bielema, a Week 0 winner a year ago. Big offensive line, running the football. They're about a 2-touchdown or so favorite at my bookie, but I like Illinois in that spot against Wyoming. UConn's at Utah State. Logan, Utah, taking center stage there. Utah State's a 4-touchdown favorite against UConn. UConn is terrible. How about Florida State, by the way, playing against Duquesne? I mean, it doesn't get much better than Florida State Duquesne. Alabama State and Howard. What else matters? The one that so two games I kind of like. Nevada is at New Mexico State. ESPN2. The entire world has been on the Aggies here. That line has really moved. New Mexico State is a home underdog to Nevada, but that line has really moved in the Aggies' direction. So you've heard of the phrase before, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The best time to bet on New Mexico State was at least a week ago. That line has really moved a lot since then. Same thing for Vanderbilt, Hawaii. A lot of movement in the direction of Vanderbilt really over the course of the summer. But you want to get back to kind of old school. Remember the old days when like June Jones, Hawaii, late night action. You got a little bit of a version of that late on Saturday with Vanderbilt playing as a favorite in Hawaii against the Rainbow Warriors. First game ever for former Hawaii quarterback Timmy Chang as head coach. That is more than you ever would want to know about Week 0. Some of you are like, listen, I'm going to the pool this weekend. I'm not watching this junk. Well, if you are planning on watching Week 0 games, that's more than you would ever want to know about all of that. We'll make that cruising around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. By the way, before we get Willie McClendon, and speaking of the weekend, one of the things we like to do around here is roll into the weekend in style, kind of a big finish to our week so we feel really good about the weekend. And with us, that's the Finished Long Drink who brings that all to you, the Big Finish. I want to show you this here today. This is kind of a blast in the past. We're almost 1 year exactly from when I got caught on the field down in Charlotte a year ago. I was dancing after the Georgia-Clemson game. I was very happy that Georgia won that game against Clemson. You got to understand something. The epicenter of all of this was first game with fans and what felt like forever. I had been going to all those games in 2020 and sitting in an empty stadium. This was a full stadium. This was a big win against Clemson. I was very happy about all of this, and I guess I got a little too happy. If you're watching on video, you see this. So way back last September, our buddy Davis, he's Holt Hines on Twitter, sent this to him. He says, old BA grooving to some Garth Brooks post-dub. He says, get after it, DawgNation Daily. And I was. They were playing like Friends in Low Places on the big speaker system there in the stadium. I was dancing around, man. I was having a good time, and I told Holt Hines on Twitter, I said I didn't think anybody saw that. And so a lot of folks kind of had some fun with that after the fact. Our buddy Orrin Cheeley sent something kind of funny to me on this related to that. Let's show Orrin here on the screen for a moment. He says, that long drink is still undefeated. Yeah, you better believe. That would have been a great time for me to pop open a finished long drink and get a little dancing going. Hopefully you got some of that going on this weekend yourself. A little dancing with friends, having a good time, and enjoying yourself. Some finished long drink, whether that's the cranberry flavor, the traditional, which I sort of like, blue can, the grapefruit flavor that goes along with the gin kick. Long drink strong. Honestly, I like that a lot too for the obvious reasons. Long drink zero, no carbs, no sugar. Whichever version of the finished long drink you love, you can try some. Check them out online, thelongdrink.com for a lot more on that. And maybe, who knows, maybe you can be dancing around this weekend like I was back in Charlotte last year when Georgia was beating up on Clemson. Either way, we look forward to a similar celebration coming up next Saturday when Georgia beats Oregon. And, of course, the finished long drink going to be a big part of all of that. I also found out they're going to be with us at Marlowe's Tavern next week too, which I'm really excited about too, because if the finished long drink is flowing, you know that I am going. And so we're looking forward to being there all next week for all that. And by the way, speaking of the Oregon Ducks, how about the honorary captain for Georgia's game next Saturday against Oregon? It's the great former Georgia running back, Willie McClendon. Let's talk to him right now. And here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger, happy to have the terrific former Georgia running back and a part of a great legacy of the McClendon family here at UGA, and one of the honorary captains for the Georgia game against Oregon next Saturday. It's Willie McClendon here on the program. Thank you so much for being on our show. It is a great pleasure to have you with us here today.
Well, Brandon, thank you, and it's my pleasure.
Obviously, it's a cool honor to see you as the honorary captain next Saturday against Oregon. You were part of the only previous matchup in this series between Georgia and the Ducks going back to 1977. What do you remember about that game and a chance to play the Ducks back then, something that we'll get a chance to see Georgia do next Saturday right here in Atlanta?
Well, it was what I remember about that game, early in the season, hot, and it was actually my first official as a starter for UGA.
Okay.
And obviously I remember winning the game.
And that's always very important to bring home the win. And obviously won't have to worry about too hot of conditions on next Saturday, just the game being in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But great to see Georgia get a win then, and looking forward to hopefully getting a win coming up next Saturday there as well. And obviously game special for you because it's the return of your son, Brian McClendon, as Georgia's wide receivers coach. I know you must be proud of the coaching career that he's put together, and how much fun is it for you to kind of have him back in Athens again and working for these Dogs once again? How happy does that make you?
Yeah, well, Brian has always been a very conscientious person about what he wants to accomplish, and I didn't know he wanted to be a college football coach, but that's the decision that he made, and it's always great to see your kids make a decision what they want to do as an adult, and he has been successful up to this point, and just so proud of the young man.
Obviously, you have your own coaching career to kind of look back on. You're a former coach there on the UGA staff. When Brian was going into coaching, how much did y'all talk about that, and how much, I guess, did he lean on you for advice about that, knowing that you had traveled a similar path to the one that he's kind of been on?
Yeah, we constantly talk about how things change, but eventually they stay the same, especially for collegiate coaching, where it's all about recruiting, player evaluation, and player development. So that conversation still goes on when he and I talk.
And, of course, the McClendon name continues to mean a lot at UGA with your nephew, Warren McClendon, one of the starting offensive linemen for Georgia, manning that right side of the offensive line. And he's gone on to a great career thus far, and obviously big expectations this year too. And as I said, he's a great representative of your family there too. I know you must be incredibly proud of what Warren has been able to do as a player here for the Dogs.
Absolutely. He's always been a focused kid. He's always been very athletic. And you never know how these things are going to work out. And just watching him grow up as a youngster, and And his actually family name is Little Warren.
Okay.
So when he's around family, he's still Little Warren.
It's kind of fun to think about him being Little Warren, obviously, given how big that he is. That's a great story. Well, we'll let you go on this. Obviously, I'm sure you're like the rest of us. You enjoyed seeing Georgia bring home the national championship last season. You'll be a part of the first game for Georgia, kind of as the reigning national champions. How special was that for you, and as alumnus of this program, to see your alma mater bring home the title last season?
Oh, that last season was such a joy, and especially the national championship game. And I think I'm one of thousands in this state as to when the Ringo kid intercepted that pass.
Yeah.
And returned it for a touchdown. Hollering so loud and so long, I lost my voice. But once again, I think I'm in a huge category of UGA football fans who fall under that category.
No question about that, and it's going to be fun to see the Dogs back at it again next Saturday, and we're obviously thrilled to know that you're the honorary captain for the game. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Congratulations on the great legacy that continues for your family at UGA with your son and your nephew. It's a real pleasure to have you here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger, and we'll hopefully look forward to getting the chance to speak to you again very soon. How great is that? Willie McClendon, the great former Georgia running back, the father of Georgia's running backs coach, the uncle of Georgia's right tackle. The McClendon legacy, a very significant one there at UGA, and it is really fun to have him as honorary captain. I get into all that kind of stuff, honorary captains, and thinking back to history, one previous meeting between Georgia and Oregon. That's all really fun to me. So it was cool to catch up with Willie McClendon there yesterday. I was looking at some of the MyBookie lines for some of those Week 0 games. We had a guy on our video comment section earlier that said he got Vanderbilt at one point in time at -1 as a 1-point favorite. They're now up to 8.5 at MyBookie right now. And I told you at one point in time, New Mexico State was like a 2-touchdown underdog to Nevada. That's down to like 8.5 now. So a lot of movement on some of these Week 0 games. Of course, speaking of our friends at MyBookie, your chance to get up and running there with a great, great new account and a great incentive just for signing up, especially for DawgNation Daily listeners and viewers when you use the promo code DawgNation. When you do that, you're going to get basically an account double, right? You put in $200, they're going to put $400 in. They're going to double your first deposit right there at MyBookie. You can place bets any place, anywhere, anytime on really just about anything, including Week 0 college football. And to be frank, some of these games aren't super interesting unless you have a little something down on them. So I told you, I kind of like Illinois. I liked New Mexico State more where it was. I liked Hawaii a lot more. I should say I liked Vanderbilt a lot more on a smaller point spread. That kind of moved up here a little bit. But I got some early thoughts there on some of those Week 0 games. I think Nebraska Northwestern could be fun with Scott Frost in Ireland and also on the hot seat. So you got thoughts on those early week games, early Week 0 games. Go to mybookie.ag for more on that. Use the promo code DawgNation, spelled the way it's supposed to be, DAWG. Use the promo code DawgNation. Make your first deposit, and MyBookie's going to double that first deposit for you. And then take advantage of all the great. You want props, you want parlays, you want over-unders, you want side bets, you want money line. You get to all the action right there with our friends at MyBookie. So check it out today. Get your big first deposit in there. Use the promo code DawgNation, and then get that deposit doubled as a special thank you from our friends at MyBookie. All right, golden shoe time here today, and this is a great one. So we have a great guy that works in our building here, big dog fan. I love talking to him when I come through each and every day, and he sent me a really cool thing, and I wanted to make sure you saw it. His name's Reggie. Does a great job. How about this man cave for Reggie? He showed this to me on his phone yesterday. Isn't this incredible? Like, great work. Get the track lighting going on there. Get the chair rail with the red and the black. Reggie, a big dog fan, works right here in our building. I see him every day, and it's always fun. A lot of you are the same way. It's like you kind of bump into these people. You talk to them. You talk dogs and whatever else. A big listener and viewer to the show, which I'm very grateful for. And I just kind of wanted to shout this out here. First of all, nice job by our producer, Michael Carvell, getting that on the air and ready to go. Love the effect there on that. Even in his garage, he's kind of got that going on too. So listen, we should all be so lucky to have a nice man cave like that to watch dogs. Many of you do there too. So I hope you're getting ready for a fun fall because it's coming up. So get that remote control ready to go. By the way, Gator Hater Updater, how about 4,978 days since those lousy stinking Gators have won a national championship. And our Gator Hater countdown, 64 days from now, we're going to be making ourselves at home in Jacksonville, beating up on Florida again. You love to love that. And we'll see you back here on Monday. DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. And on video, as you see the golden shoe and the Gator Hater countdown come into full frame and full focus, we'll get ready for R.S. Andrews cool down. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric. R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to on all of that. Our fun show, Go With The Flow, presented by R.S. Andrews, returns next week. Boy, I'm excited about that. New time for that, by the way, in terms of when it airs on the DawgNation video channels. But really fun stuff. So we're going to take your comments. We'll have a good time. Hopefully no fire alarm today. There was a little bit of a weird thing going on. By the way, great look at the man cave there on that too. Yeah, Reggie's a good dude. Works in our building. You sort of see folks from time to time. And I don't know. It's just kind of nice to have nice people working in the building with you. So Reggie's a great guy, and he showed this off to me. I think it's cool stuff, and I was glad to kind of show that off there as well, including that great national championship painting. All those jerseys. What a great look. Yeah, you got the wall with the red and the black, kind of the chair rail that kind of breaks that up. Very well done. Very well done indeed on that. Okay, so hopefully no fire alarm. So yesterday, prior to the fire alarm, I sort of heard this like rumbling and grumbling. Like every now and then, it's like we have a studio, but, on either side of the studio is just like regular life taking place, right? Like over here on the right, these are outside of the building. Sometimes there'll be like window washers up there and stuff like that. You hear them banging and slamming around. And over here, you hear, goodness knows what from time to time. And so yesterday I heard a little rumbling and grumbling of something prior to the fire alarm going off. So hopefully that's not going to happen today, because that was certainly an awkward way to conclude on all that. Tennille says she prefers the old school golden shoe that I made with my daughter. So I still have that. And we're going to probably bring that at some point in time. So, and maybe we'll bring it back and put it on the desk. When we changed our studios, some of the bosses were like, we want you to keep a cleaner desk. And they thought I was getting a little too, cluttered with the desk. We had a lot of props there going for a while. And so, I kind of negotiated Eddie being back. And now we've kind of gone to the Coke bottle again. We're giving Coke a lot of free advertising as if they need more advertising. So I'd actually like to, maybe we will bring back the old school shoe and put it on the desk, because I actually kind of miss it. It's in a safe place. It's well taken care of. But, at some point in time, we have plans to kind of use that again and things like that. But maybe it just sort of needs to be back on the desk where it belongs. But I'll run afoul of my bosses for doing that, but that'll just be the latest thing I'm in trouble for. Paul Moon says, YOLO, it's your desk, BA. There you go, yeah. Let me try to run that up the food chain. Hey, Paul Moon on YouTube says it's my desk. I can do with it whatever I want to. Let's try and see how that goes. Frank Patterson points out if John Stinchcomb were here, he would have just sort of fought through the fire alarm and kept on trying to do the show, as he did a couple of weeks ago when we were on site for the Corky Kell lunch, and that is very true. That is very true. John Davinger, or I should say Diverger, also pointing out that Brian McClendon's got the best winning percentage of any UGA head coach ever. Obviously 1-0 after his win against Penn State as interim head coach in the 2015 Gator Bowl. That's a very good point. Spencer Clark checks in to say, "Go Dogs." Appreciate that. Andrew Hughes says, I've been bench pressing buckets of Saban tears. I'm starting to look like a 5-star, so I'm worried Texas A&M will show up at my house with cars and money. There you go. That's really funny. It's kind of a double zinger. That's one of those that kind of took a little bit of a twist. It's like a Saban zinger, but then at the end, it's like kind of brings back a Jimbo Fisher zinger. It's a little bit of kind of a double dip on that. That's well done by Spencer. Well done by Andrew Hughes. Well done indeed by Andrew Hughes. Jay Shipe says, he goes, once it went full corporate, you got watered down like the Facebook version of the show. We're not full corporate. We now, listen, I have corporate overlords, but we're not full corporate around here, for sure. Trevor Maffetone says, is Go With The Flow today? Go With The Flow returns for next week. I could not convince anybody to do a week 0 version of Go With The Flow today. I could not convince them to do that, but it is coming back next week. So I'll just give you my own thoughts about the games. I told you, I like Illinois at about 10.5, minus 10.5. I liked New Mexico State, kind of where it was earlier this week. At 8.5, I'm not quite so sure anymore. I liked Vanderbilt where it was. We had a guy on DawgNation.com said he got it at -1. It's like 8.5 now. It was like 6 a couple of days ago. That thing is launching into the stratosphere. And part of the issue on like the New Mexico State game and the Vanderbilt game is it's sort of thought that Nevada has just lost a ton. And Hawaii, there are a bunch of stories about this last year. They essentially had a player revolt, and they have like almost nobody returning from their team a year ago. Fresh, brand new coach in Timmy Chang. So there's a little bit of if anything, teams like Hawaii and Nevada may even be worse than people realize. And so that's kind of the story there on that. Paul Moon says Cover 4 coming back. We have some cool Cover 4 related stuff as it relates to that we're going to be doing, I think. Antoine Sampson says Pro Football Focus has UGA with the third best wide receiver group behind USC and Ohio State. Yeah, I don't know if I'm buying that. I mean, I'd love for that to be true, but are you really buying that based on the production from the room? That seems a little aggressive, I guess, for me. Eugene Wallace says, what's the best game to watch? Best game to watch is probably the big noon game between Nebraska and Northwestern. That's probably the best overall game. It's in Ireland. Both these teams won 3 games a year ago, but like Scott Frost is like essentially coaching for his job. Like if you lose in Ireland, Northwestern, then you might as well stay over there and enjoy. Is Blarney Stone? Is that a thing? Like what is that? Whatever else, whatever it is that enjoy some Jamesons or some Bushmills or something like that, because you ain't coming back to Lincoln, Nebraska if you lose to Northwestern in Ireland. I'm guessing. Let's see what else. Cindy OG said I told him we would have a Cover 4 this summer, yet here we are. That's probably a fair criticism. On DawgNation.com for a moment. They're still talking about, they've been talking about Stetson Bennett on DawgNation.com all day long. Hemingway says when you open the Dog Nation chat, you're going to be confused concerning which platform you're on. No doubt about that. Stafford Square Dog mentioning JT Daniels. Next week is a very interesting game in the life of JT Daniels. One of the more fun games for like week 1, which starts obviously next week, is the backyard brawl between Pitt and West Virginia. This is going to be a really fun game because on the one hand, you got JT Daniels making his debut for the Mountaineers at quarterback. Graham Harrell, obviously, his coach now. And on the other side, you got former USC quarterback Keaton Slovis, who's the next in line as the quarterback there in Pitt. These are big rivals. They hate each other. It's a great rivalry, but it's also a really good showdown between 2 former USC quarterbacks, and obviously a little bit of extra interest for Georgia fans because JT Daniels is obviously here at UGA. So backyard brawl between the 2 former USC quarterbacks in a great rivalry game should be a lot of fun next week. Let's see what else. Boy, it's all Stetson Bennett all the time over here. Hemingway says typing on an iPad's dicey for me. I like iPhones and I like Mac laptops. I've never really understood the purpose of an iPad. I don't really quite get that. I don't really quite understand like the functionality of the iPad. Like I would either want a phone, something very small, or a laptop, something that actually works like a computer. The iPad has never quite made as much sense to me. But maybe I'm just missing something. Basil says David Green was his all-time favorite UGA quarterback. Used to trick the cameras with that play-action pass. Yeah, he was great at that. Really fun. Let's see what else. I'm trying to kind of find something that's not the same quarterback debate we've always had. Let's see what else. Cam Hasty says, give us some more karaoke. I would rather sing Garth Brooks karaoke right here on camera than have the same Stetson Bennett conversation that we've already had before. I would. Now, the one thing I've been willing to acknowledge on the whole Bennett discussion is that there must obviously be some good points on both sides. Otherwise, the argument wouldn't continue, right? We understand that. I guess the problem I've always had is I think that the pro-Bennett crowd, and honestly, I think most Georgia fans should be pro-Bennett, but the pro-Bennett crowd, I think, has always been a lot more willing to concede the flaws in that side of the argument, the faults in the armor, if you will. I think they've been a little bit more willing to concede some of that than the anti-Bennett crowd has been. I think one of the things that the anti-Bennett crowd has kind of done is, and this is one of the reasons why I do kind of get frustrated with sort of the anti-Bennett folks, it's not that they don't have some fair arguments. I think they do. I think that when Stetson's had a chance to remove all doubt, I think he stopped short of doing that. He's won a national championship. He's done some very good things for UGA. I think just factually, objectively speaking, he had a good year a year ago. But given the chance to remove all doubt, I think he stopped short of doing that. However, that some people kind of put themselves so far out there, and sometimes this is fans and sometimes this is media person, but some people put themselves so far out there on the anti-Stetson Bennett ledge that it almost became a personality trait, or it almost became the sum total of their personality. And now they can't acknowledge any of the good of Bennett without revealing the fact that they kind of got it way wrong for a whole lot last fall. And ultimately, that's the issue that I have with the Stetson Bennett conversation. It isn't that there aren't valid points on both sides of the discussion. It's that, from my perspective, only one side seems willing to acknowledge the validity of all points. Hemingway says, so glad to hear that Fromm's coming to Marlowe's, planning on being there. That's awesome to hear. Appreciate that. Let me go to Facebook here for a moment. We have not been there today. I've got like 87 browser tabs open right now, too. That's probably not destined to be a good thing eventually. All right. On Facebook. And I hope everybody's doing well over there. Hope you're getting ready for a great weekend. Fun stuff and getting ready for big things. I'll see you tonight on Peachtree TV for North Atlanta and Drew, a part of a quadruple header of high school football games over the course of the next 2 days from Midtown High School, one of my favorite venues for high school football. A wonderful place right there next to Piedmont Park, really in Piedmont Park for all intents and purposes. I think one of the historic spots in our city and state. Jacob O'Neill says 3 minutes on Facebook. We'll try to do a little bit more than that. We can't go forever long, but we'll try to do a little bit more than that. I'm trying to end the show earlier so we have more time for comments without having to take the show to 11:45 to get it all done. Trying to do that. Randy Hall says, need a moniker for this year's defense. Unlike Young Guns, how about Young Dogs? I don't mind that. I mean, to me, I don't see why they don't just do Junkyard Dog every single year. Like Nebraska, this is not a great comparison because Nebraska sucks, but like Nebraska, aren't they the black shirt defense every year no matter what? To me, just like maintaining that sort of Junkyard Dog legacy, especially considering the fact that Georgia has a great defense almost every year, I would kind of like that. Kevin Cook says you can bet on Stat. He delivers the mail almost every single day. Or not almost. He says he delivers the mail every day. I like that, Kevin. I think you're onto something. I do. Oh, this is cool. Matt Rugavina says, how about fun with records? Our victory over Bama in the national championship game was Saban's second worst loss at Alabama. Second only to the Clemson game, 44-16 at the end of the 2018 season. So there you go from Matt. Van Bird says, Stetson has had a year of playing against the best defense ever, so I expect he's really going to light it up this year. Yeah, I also had some people tell me, going back to the first scrimmage, and listen, opinions are always in the eye of the beholder. I don't mind acknowledging that. But, there are some people that sort of hold on to this faint hope that, well, if Stetson Bennett's a good quarterback, maybe Georgia has a great quarterback, but it's just not playing him. I mean, the people that I've talked to, former players who saw the last scrimmage, boosters who saw the first scrimmage, the people that I've talked to have said from their eyewitness account, it's obvious that Stetson Bennett's just the best quarterback on this roster right now. That doesn't mean that some of the guys can't eventually be good, but the notion that Georgia's got a quarterback just as good as or even better than Bennett, but they're just not playing him, the people who've seen these scrimmages in person that I've talked to have said that's just not the case. Now, these are also not people that I think of as sort of die-hard, dyed-in-the-wool pro-Stetson people necessarily. They're just more just pro-Georgia people, right? They just want Georgia to be good no matter who's playing. But, they have come away convinced that Bennett has looked the best. And admittedly, 2 snapshots, a couple of different scrimmages and different people at both scrimmages. But admittedly, that's been kind of the takeaway there on that. So, that's the one thing we're going to try to push back on we can is the sort of wishful thinking of, well, Georgia must have a quarterback better than Stetson Bennett. Well, if it did, it'd be playing him. Or Georgia must have a player better than so-and-so at some other spot. Well, if it did, it would be playing him. That's, Georgia's going to play the best 11 guys. I'm not coach speak when I say that. I'm just telling you the truth that it wouldn't benefit Kirby to do anything other than play the best 11 possible players. Let's see what else. Zach Adams says, I look like I sing My Heart Out to Broken Halo by Chris Stapleton every time it comes on. Yeah, I'm not the biggest Chris Stapleton guy. I mean, I don't dislike Chris Stapleton, but that's not my thing quite as much. When I was younger, I used to be into sort of hipster music a little bit, and I finally just gave all that up. Like at one point in time, I listened to kind of random stuff that you didn't hear on the radio or you didn't hear on the sort of mainstream satellite channels or whatever. I used to listen to all that kind of stuff, and I thought it was important for me to be into what I thought of as cool music. Like somebody mentioned Gary Clark a little earlier or something like that. I used to be kind of into hip music. I don't know if it's because I've had kids or if I'm older now. I don't know what it is. I'm not into that kind of stuff at all anymore. That's a huge change. Me in my early 30s and now me in my, I guess you have to say mid 40s now. I'm 45 now. I can't quite say early 40s anymore. I have completely given all of that up. Just stopped cold turkey. Just decided one day that this is not for me. This is for somebody younger than me. And that's kind of the way I've been ever since then. Becky Rutledge says, I should bring back the original golden shoe. So maybe we will do that. Philip Jordan Wells laughing at me saying hip music. I sort of mean hipster music. That's kind of what I mean. For some reason, I used to think it was really important to keep up with what hipster music was popular, but now I don't care. Hugh Nash says Lawrence Welk. No, it's not Lawrence Welk either. I listen to a lot of mainstream country. And if you could have gone back to me in my 20s and told me that one day I would do that, I would have thought that was the craziest sounding thing in the world. I used to hate country music, hated it. And now that's just pretty much what I listen to. And that's just kind of it. It's one of those things where one day I just changed. And I've just been the same ever since. Let's see what else. Joe Moody says, so y'all still trying to tell me that Stetson Bennett isn't good enough to win a national title? Yeah, I mean, in this particular case, you've got scoreboard on your side, right, Joel? You definitely do. All right, a couple more comments here. Philip Jordan Wells mentioned Huey Lewis. Now, listen, I actually don't mind a little, hip to be square, Huey Lewis in the news. I don't mind that. Bill Kelly says the iPad is an iPhone for old eyes. That may be what it is. Randy Hall says, any bubbles in my background. That's kind of funny. That may be what the iPad really is then. Let's see what else. Kevin Cook says you need a mini national championship trophy in your desk. So my colleague on high school football, Rusty Manziel, we don't typically, talk about other media folks in the show, but Rusty sent me this picture the other day of a Georgia national championship ring. I've got the Braves replica national championship ring from when they gave it out at the stadium the other day, but he had seen a Georgia national championship ring. I got to tell you, if I had that, I would put that thing right there. Boom. I guess they sell them. I wouldn't mind getting one of those because it's really nice. Really nice. I thought Rusty might get me one of those rings, but he did not. At least he hasn't yet. Darius Brown says, I was not a Stetson fan at first, but he has earned my respect. See, Darius is a good guy. That to me is very appropriate. It's okay, I think we were all very surprised when Stetson Bennett, I was surprised when he started the UAB game and played as well as he did. That wasn't really on my radar. And, I think at one point in time throughout last season, I would have told you that I thought Georgia's best chance of winning would probably come with JT Daniels. But over the course of the season, Darius says he won me over. Over the course of the season, he won me over. I'm the kind of person, you try to pay attention to what's going on, and if new information becomes available, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to change your opinion. And I think that Stetson Bennett won a lot of us over with the way that he played last season because most of us were really enjoying the ride that Georgia was going on last year. So I think Darius is right about that. All right, final comments, and then we're going to go here. YouTube, then DawgNation.com, and then we're getting out. And this is way, way longer than we need to be going. Jonathan Aaron says, besides any of our games, were a few games you're interested in watching this season? It's a good question. So putting Georgia aside for a moment, I am very interested in LSU. LSU is a team that spent big dollars to hire Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly's been in the playoff twice. Brian Kelly could have made the playoff this year. And by this year, I mean last year. Brian Kelly was 11-1. The only loss was to Cincinnati. That's a team that went to the college football playoff. Kelly's won something like 40-something straight games when his team has been favored by 10 or more points, which maybe doesn't sound all that impressive. But, I mean, like Georgia's nowhere near on that list because Georgia lost, to South Carolina a couple of years ago. That actually putting a long winning streak together when you're a favorite, when you're, playing an unranked team, it's actually not as easy sometimes you might think that it is. That's something that a guy like Brian Kelly's done pretty well. That there's a chance that Kelly's hiring at LSU is a really big deal. The thing that could hold them back is I don't know they have a great quarterback or even a good quarterback or even an average quarterback, and that may hold them back here a little bit. But for those of you who don't like Jimbo Fisher, and for those of you who think that Jimbo Fisher is eventually going to be proven as some sort of phony, as some sort of counterfeit, as some sort of fraud, the most likely way that occurs is for a guy like Kelly to really figure it out at LSU. Keep in mind here, the last three head coaches at LSU have all won national championships. Orgeron, Les Miles, Nick Saban. And now you've got Brian Kelly, who's been a big winner somewhere else, coming to LSU. It just kind of goes to show you the overall, I think, size and scope of the SEC, that a guy like Kelly's hiring could somewhat go under the radar, but I think it kind of has. So in big games here this year, I'm going to be watching LSU pretty closely because that's one of those teams that could really kind of shake up the balance of the SEC West here a little bit. I'm watching them really closely. Beyond that, I'm also really interested in Clemson. I think that Clemson is either, just like everybody thinks they are, fourth best team in the country, and it could be that we have the 4 playoff spots essentially decided before the season even begins. There's a chance that's true if Clemson is as good as folks think they can be, and if the quarterback DJ Uiagalelei is as good as Dabo Swinney has been making the rounds this summer, trying to suggest that he is, that Clemson may just be back on top in the ACC once again. They're still recruiting pretty well, especially when it comes to defensive linemen, and some of that happening right here in Georgia. A couple of names from the Peach State going to Clemson along that defensive line. So they still haven't lost their recruiting edge necessarily, but they were lousy on offense last season. By the end of the year, they kind of got a little bit better. They were certainly playing better overall as a team, absorbing some of the injuries they'd had on defense. But Clemson's also a team that I'm really, really interested in too. And I guess if you're going to give me one more sort of, I'm halfway paying attention, I'm a little bit interested in Oklahoma. There are a lot of people that don't think Oklahoma's going to be very good this year at all. And I'm not quite so sure I join that judgment. The Big 12 is one of those leagues where a little bit of toughness goes a long way. I think Brent Venables provides some of that. Now, I know it's weird when you lost your wide receivers coach a couple of days ago, and I don't know how that factors into the action on the field or not. But I do think that Dylan Gabriel at times has been a pretty good quarterback. I think that a little bit of toughness, as I said before, could really benefit Oklahoma. They had none of that with Lincoln Riley, a pillow soft program that he was running. And I kind of got my eye on Oklahoma a little bit too, as at least an interesting team worth paying attention to. Let's see what else. All right, we got to get ready to go. All right, good stuff. Good stuff. Final time at DawgNation.com. Then we're gone. Johnny Surf Dog's got Florida losing to Utah, Kentucky, at Tennessee, LSU, Georgia, at Texas A&M, and at Florida State. That'd be a fun season, Johnny. I like that. He says Gators going 5-7. You heard it first. He's also hoping that Kendall Milton stays healthy, which is a wish we certainly all have. Jonathan Moore, he's calling his shot here, saying he's got Notre Dame shocking the nation and whipping Ohio State. That's a big prediction. Good stuff. That's really good stuff. All right, Jacob O'Neill says happy weekend. I wish that to all of you there too. Let us get ready to go for now. Y'all check out the Atlanta Journal-Constitution online, ajc.com. We've got high school football tonight on Peachtree TV from Midtown High School between North Atlanta and Drew. And there's all kinds of other big games all across the state here, too. So you can get coverage of that on ajc.com, and I hope you will check that out for all of that. Also, the Tour Championship at Eastlake continues here. That's the finale of the FedEx Cup playoffs on the PGA Tour. PGA Tour's had a lot of big announcements as of late, but the tour season comes to an end here this week, and then like the next week they start the wraparound tour for next year. But, it officially comes to an end here right now. Also, some fun things to do for Atlanta for the upcoming weekend. That's good stuff. And don't forget, Jake Fromm with us live at the Marlowe's in Brookhaven coming up. Not Brookhaven. Marlowe's in Dunwoody. I don't even know where that came from. Obviously, it's time to get off the air. Marlowe's in Dunwoody. That's Thursday, September 1st, 6 p.m., 1317 Dunwoody Village Parkway. Can't wait to see you there for that. Okay, R.S. Andrews, thanks to them for making the show possible, the cool down possible. Find them online for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. Air conditioning unit, if you're hot at home right now because your AC unit's kind of old and tired, get some new life breathed into it. It just costs $99. Find them online, rsandrews.com for that. We will see you back here Monday, DawgNation Daily, presented by Kroger. We'll look forward to talking to you then.